Welcome back, everybody. This is Rodrigo, founder with Actual Real Estate News. Really excited about what we're talking about today. We're going to be talking about what it was introduced to me, or kind of while we were setting this conversation up, as the holy grail of real estate investing. So really excited to dive into what that's going to look like. And we're going to be talking about something that we haven't really explored yet on this show. We're going to be focusing a little bit more on multifamily and kind of the steps to get into that and what those positive benefits are. Even though, previously a lot of our conversations have been around single family housing and whatnot here in the area. So without further ado, I'm going to be joined here by Chris Larsen with Cannell Capital Partners. Thanks, Chris.
Absolutely. Thank you for the time today as well.
Yeah, it's super exciting to sit down and have this conversation. For two reasons. One, it's very popular right now anywhere you read about real estate to talk about multifamily.
Yeah.
And then B, it's just not something I'm very familiar with. So I've got some personal questions, curiosities that kind of get to dig into.
All right. I look forward to it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So Asheville, it's not a huge place, and yet you're here and you're doing your thing. What's your story to get to Asheville?
Great question, and I could go on for a long time, but my wife and I were very intentional about choosing to live here. I grew up in Maryland. My wife and I met in Virginia Tech. We were living in Northern Virginia, and great place to start a career.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was a great place to start a family. I grew up kind of south of Baltimore. I was born in Baltimore. My mother's side of the family's up there, and I love the mountains. So what's interesting is I had this whole pile of research. It was about, a little inch and a half thick. I came across the folder this past weekend cleaning up because we're about to move out of our house. And it's all the same stuff we use for multifamily today. And I looked at, what the quality of life in cities, cost of living, proximity to travel, to outdoor activities, these sorts of things. I even looked at stuff like water sources. So I didn't want to be in an area like out west and have a water crisis.
Issues, yeah.
So Asheville happened to be, it was one on my spreadsheet that I made in Excel, because I'm an engineer by training, so I love spreadsheets.
Get the charts going.
Absolutely. And I stack ranked them, and I had a point system and everything. And it's funny because I opened the folder, and there was Asheville circled in a big green highlighter as one of the ones on this list. And I was showing it to my wife. So it's kind of serendipitous. I was working with a manager I knew, and he asked me if I wanted to move to Charlotte to come work for him. And I've been in the medical device industry for about 15 years. And I said, I really appreciate it, but it wouldn't make a lot of sense to move from DC to Charlotte for us. I said, you know what? If you ever need somebody in Asheville, I'd probably be interested. And lo and behold, 9 months later, my wife and I were here. And the nice thing about sales is that you can do it from anywhere. And the nice thing about multifamily real estate is you can do it from anywhere as well.
Yeah. Well, you got to Asheville, and when you got to Asheville, 9 years ago, did I cut on that correct? No, you said 9 months after.
Yeah, it was March of 2008, so it was about 10 and a half years ago now.
Oh.
It's kind of hard to believe, over a decade.
That's funny. So I got here in fall of 2009.
Okay.
And before I moved here, I was living in Canada, and I grew up in Bogota, Colombia, in the mountains and everything. I was living in Ontario, so it's very flat. I was like, I can never do another winter again.
Yeah.
Like that. I was like, what's the farthest place south I can go that has mountains? And that's how I ended up in Nashville.
Love it. Yeah. My wife's from Canada, by the way.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. So I get the cold. We've been up there a bunch.
My sister lives up there, and she's like, come up for Christmas. Nope. Yeah. So when you moved down here in 08, were you doing the multifamily then?
No, we were not. So it's been a real evolution. I can kind of talk through that.
Yeah, I was going to say, how did you go from medical devices to multifamily?
So it was kind of backwards, actually. Okay. So I like to say I was always an investor. So I raced bicycles. I started racing bicycles when I was 14 years old. Rode bikes since I was, 4 or 5, whenever I learned to ride a bike. But started racing when I was 14. It's kind of integral, because that's where I met my business partner, Peter Cannell, was on the bike. But racing bikes taught me a couple things. It taught me discipline, taught me how to work hard. It did not teach me how to make money, because you don't make a lot of money racing a bicycle, unless you're a huge name. Even then,
in any sport, it's like that.
It's just like that. It's the top 1% of the 1%, and cycling's even worse. So you don't make a lot of money. But I loved racing my bike. I wanted to be a cyclist, a professional cyclist. So I thought, how can I make money? I always kind of had this entrepreneurial streak. I sold wrapping paper when I was like 12 years old. I had a little lawn business that I would do on the weekends. Never had a real 9 to 5. I sold lofts in college, and my freshman year of college, I had a family friend that actually introduced me to racing bicycles, not cycling, but racing bicycles, and he gave me a Money magazine article, and I'll never forget. It had this curve, and it was a logarithmic curve, and it was showing the growth of a dollar or the growth of a Roth IRA, and it was talking about that. And I thought, man, this is okay. Like, I need to learn how to become an investor. So I thought, if I can be an investor, I can make money in a passive way. I can go race my bike.
Right.
And so I started to look at different businesses and different investments. And in between my freshman and sophomore years, my best friend, my roommate, training partner passed away. Had a massive brain hemorrhage and died on the spot. And it caused me to pause. It took me about a year to do that. I was kind of, I just kind of put my head down, went to school, rode my bike. And after a year, I was not doing so great in engineering, because engineering is pretty demanding. And I realized that even winning bike races wasn't making me happy. So I quit racing. I got back to school so I wouldn't fail out of the engineering program. I didn't really want to be an engineer. That's a whole nother story. But I wanted to have a useful degree.
Go ahead and finish it out.
Yeah, and during that following year, not only was I day trading, doing swing trading, doing very well in the market, but I started researching real estate. I bought my first piece of residential real estate. So again, that was really designed. It kind of fell on the back of my idea of being an investor, so that I could have this passive income stream. But that's how I found my first piece of real estate. And then when I decided I wasn't going to be a professional cyclist, I kind of had to figure out
what to do.
what I really wanted to do. But I still wanted to be an investor because I love the idea of the freedom it could provide and that lifestyle.
So you kind of fell into it because you were trying to create an opportunity for you to do what your passion was at that point in time.
That's actually that's a great way to put it, Rodrigo. I don't think anybody's ever really kind of looked through it like that. But I think that's what financial freedom allows you to do, or being an investor. That's really what I'm saying, is I wanted financial independence or freedom to do what I was passionate about. And I also realized that your passions can change.
Well, that's kind of what I was going to ask you now, and that's something I've personally found for me. A lot of the things that motivated me, I got into it about 6 years ago, real estate, so I'm very much still at the beginning. But a lot of the reasons that I got into it then are not the reasons I stayed into it or that drive me now. And I was going to ask you, so you started to create the passive income for the biking, and you got into the real estate. I've personally found that some parts of the real estate side kind of are the passion as for me now. And have you found like a transition that's been comparable?
Absolutely. So my passion for freedom, if you will, which that flows into a lot of different things, which is really, you could even say the country was founded on that ability. So it's really
good argument for sure.
Right? But we don't want to get political or go into that. But no, it's now my passion really is helping other people achieve financial independence, whether it's helping them in their career. I still have a lot of people I've mentored that call me for career advice, whether it's helping them, just from a basic financial perspective, and do that. And then the other side is you kind of alluded to it, there's a real workforce housing issue. So it's nice to be in an industry that you can help people that are having a hard time finding a nice, clean, safe place to live. And also you can help the investors that are on the other side of that as well. So and then now I have 2 young boys, and I'd argue that they're probably, they would take the most of my passion in my life, and I get to teach them a lot of those lessons as well.
Yeah, it's kind of the story with real estate I've found is just it changes all the time, because you have different things that come in and out of your life, and they influence the way you look at it. With you went from single family though, right at the beginning. That was the first one. And when was your first multifamily? Part of buying, selling something, and what was the jump? Yeah,
so the jump, it really came, not to be too kind of morose, but my friend passed away. I just turned 19. My best friend Chris passed away, and fast forward, I had several single family residences, and I figured, hey, if I buy these and I pay them off, then I'm good. There's a certain number in my mind that I needed every month, and the rents were achieving that number, and I was working on paying them off and earn enough money to do that. And just kind of going with my plan, really focusing on my career and making a good income. My mother passed away at the end of 2011, and it was a time of reflection. Actually, I started racing again in age-graded stuff. I kind of took a step back. I had 2 boys at the time. Actually, when my mother died, it was a week before my second son was born.
Oh, wow.
So it was a real introspective time. We went to the World Championships about a month after that as well on my bike. So a lot of intense events were occurring. Yeah, so that following year, I kind of reflected and I looked at everything in my life. Like, is this really the best use of my time? Everything from career to family to investments. And when I looked at my single family investments that were performing in the 30% range as far as returns were concerned, I was getting about 7% before tax.
Right.
And I thought, man, there's got to be a better way. So I was at a business seminar with my wife. We were out in, I think it was Reno, or Tahoe. We were in Tahoe. And I was talking to somebody about real estate, and he said, have you looked at multifamily? So this was 2012. And I thought, no. I mean, yeah, I know about commercial, and it's just kind of the same thing. And he said, well, hey, I think you should talk to a friend of mine. This is what he does. He works with investors, and they buy multifamily properties, and they fix them up. And I thought, that's great. I'm happy to talk to him. What I found was multifamily would give me all the things I really wanted, which was I wanted the income, but I was sick of getting calls from tenants. I got a call, my wife can tell you, on our honeymoon, and I had to pay like $30 for like a 5-minute conversation, and I had a tenant issue that I was dealing with. So not only was I on my honeymoon, but I had that, and I was on call in my medical device career. I just didn't want any of that other stuff. So I want to get rid of that. This was an opportunity to invest in a truly passive investment. And the other thing was, as a high income earner, you lose a lot of tax benefits from real estate. So when I learned that I could retain those through a commercial or multifamily, it was very appealing. But what really jumped out at me, Rodrigo, was, and kind of circling back to like, why is multifamily so hot right now? It's really, I believe, from the demographic trends that are occurring today. And I mean, we could spend a whole hour talking about that.
Right.
But when I looked into that, it was the same things that I did research on when I was looking into what career to go into. And I looked at different careers in specifically medical device and the medical field, as well as like financial industry. And the reason was the baby boomers. So now we're going through the millennials, and what's interesting is the millennial trends that are driving housing are also being overlaid by the baby boomers, which are, as of today, the fastest growing population of renters in this country. So when I saw that kind of rising tide in multifamily with all these other benefits that I really wanted, the light bulb went off. Yeah, so that was 2012. I introduced my partner Pete to it, and Pete and I have known each other now. This is 2019. It'll be, it was 22 years.
Oh, really?
Last week.
And you met on bikes?
We met 2 days before I started college at Virginia Tech on a training ride, So, and we became really good friends, training partners, and he was there when my best friend passed away, and we just became really, really close friends. So that was 2012, and here we are nearly 7 years later, and we began as investors, and then we introduced others to it. We were bringing investors to some partners we were working with. And then we actually had more real estate experience than they did.
Right.
So we took our engineering background, kind of the way we thought, and how we introduced systems, like I did in my medical device career, and we kind of blended all those together. And we officially formed our partnership at the end of 2015. Okay. And so it's going on 3 years.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on the 3-year mark.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
Obviously started this off by talking about multifamily being the holy grail. And why is it that you've dubbed it as that, and you've written a book about, an ebook around it, and that's something that it seems that you really believe in, and what's the 30-60 second recap and why?
There's a lot of great investments out there, and some are the best for different people at different times. I kind of stole the Holy Grail term from Ray Dalio, and he's by some arguments let's just say he's one of the best investors of all time. Bridgewater Capital. So Ray Dalio says the Holy Grail of investing is decreased risk with increased reward, and that's what multifamily gives you. It gives you, and the data supports this, the best risk-adjusted return out of any sector of the real estate market. So you got risk-adjusted return, you have cash flow, because I believe strongly that a good investment should have cash flow. You have appreciation, and we like to call it forced appreciation, because you can actually control it. And you're a real estate guy. You can walk into a house, you can improve it, and you can improve the value. You can see it in front of your eyes, not just like hoping and praying that your stock goes up in value. And then you also get great tax benefits as well on that. So those are the four things that really determine why I called it Holy Grail.
Is it for everybody?
Not necessarily. I mean, no investments for everybody. And the demographics may change. I think that multifamily is going to persist this trend for the next 10, 20, maybe even 30 years with the way the demographic trends are going. But us specifically, our group only works with accredited investors. So it may not be great for, well, I'll use myself as an example. I was 21. I would have loved to invest in a 200-unit apartment building had I known what I know now. But I had less than $10,000 to invest.
Well, I was going to ask you, so that's a term that is thrown around a lot in the real estate world. But what does it actually mean, and how do you define that?
So I'm gonna read it from the SEC guidelines, because I don't want to. We're pretty by the book.
So I'm
gonna
get
pull
that
it
one
up
right
here.
for sure.
Yeah. So this is off of Investopedia, but it comes from the SEC. So it says who is an accredited investor, and we operate under Reg D by the SEC. But the definition by the SEC is a natural person with income exceeding $200,000 in each of the 2 most recent years, or if you have a spouse or a joint income, that income exceeds $300,000 for those years, and they have a reasonable expectation to continue that. Or that individual and their spouse or their partner are worth $1 million, excluding their primary residence. So it's an either or. A lot of people mistake that. They think, oh, I got to be worth this, and I have to make this money. But we work with individuals, so a lot of doctors, surgeons that meet the income. Maybe they're young, they don't have the net worth, and we have retirees that don't have the income, but they meet the net worth.
With the net worth, does that include, does it have to be, equity? Or does, if you have a property and say you own the property, it's retail value, or it's, it's 200,000, you owe 100 on it. Is it 200 or 100 that gets applied to your net worth? Yeah,
so it's going to be basically what a bank's financial statement would say. So it's going to be your equity, or your equity. So it's going to be your your assets minus your liabilities, essentially, minus and excluding your home.
Okay, very cool. That's super interesting.
Yeah.
Have you talked with people, on this journey that weren't accredited investors, and they're like, hey, I really want to get there. What's the fast track?
Absolutely.
And I mean, well, maybe not the fast track, but what's the steps to get there?
That's a great question. So we talk a little bit about the 4 pillars and and some of the things we've written. And I think the first thing is you need to invest in yourself and find a way to, I say, find a way to make a lot of money. And really, I think that's be the best at what you do. So I talk to a lot of younger people. I used to mentor and train people when I worked for Medtronic. And I'd tell them, hey, this is how you can rapidly increase your income. But once you do it, you need to have a plan in place. So, and that's what I did. I said, okay, here's my plan. I didn't have the income, so I went and found a career that would give me that income. So I think that's if a young person, and we have a gentleman by the name of Caleb that works with us. He's young. I met him when he was 17, I think it was. And he came to me with that question. I said, look, find a way to grow your business, to increase your income, and then once you're ready and it's appropriate for you, you can look at the investments that make sense. And there are a ton of other investments, as you know, Rodrigo, along the way for people that haven't quite gotten there. And I'll use one other example. I had somebody that I knew through basically was a colleague in the industry in his early 30s, and he called me. He said, "Hey, I got $100,000. I want to invest with you guys." And I went through, and
Didn't meet the
he
criteria?
didn't technically meet the criteria at the time.
Hmm.
He said, "Well, what should I do?" So I gave him some steps, and lo and behold, he called us back on the last acquisition we had, and we were happy to bring him in on that deal. And it was the right time. It was a couple years later.
Okay.
And so we feel good about it. I'm always excited when I can introduce younger people, because when you look at this space over the course of a long period of time, it's very powerful.
I was going to say, it's for the younger person, what is like an appropriate timeline to set yourself up for that? I think that,
Wow,
I know that's so many variables that go into that, and,
Sure.
and maybe it's impossible to answer that well.
Yeah.
But if within your experience, the people who are asking that question are asking that question with intention.
Absolutely.
And assume that they're ready to actually perform on the advice that you give them. What's a realistic, like, hey, this is going to be a 3-year journey, or a 5-year, or 10-year,
Yeah. Well, I think the easy answer is, at a minimum, an individual has to go out and have, meet the accredited status.
Right.
Then we can talk to them. But I think really an individual they have to have they should have proper insurance. Make sure that they've protected themselves, their family. Have that in place. Have like emergency savings in place, and do that. And really have an investment plan. So when people call me, the first question I ask them on the phone, Rodrigo, and they say, "Hey, I'm interested," I say, "Why? Why are we on the phone? And what else? What are your other investments? Is this a good fit for you?" Because there are limitations.
Right.
So it's not a liquid investment. So people that say, "Hey, I need this money for college in a few years," it might not be a good fit. I have a friend who's moving to Australia for 3 years.
Right.
He said, "Hey, I sold my house. I got this chunk of cash. I'd like to invest it with you. I want to get it back in 3 years." I said, "Well, you might get it back in 3 years,
You might
but
not,
I can't
though,
guarantee it." So I helped steer him towards something that was more appropriate.
Okay.
So it's a complex question, but I would say at a minimum, invest in yourself, be the best you can be, make a lot of money, meet the accredited investor status, get an investment plan in place. Whether you research yourself or find a professional, or we talk to people about that. And then when it's a good fit and you have that additional investable income to put in there, then that's probably a good time for it.
Awesome. You've talked about planning a lot.
Yeah.
And I know
I'm a planner.
it might be a curveball question. I know we didn't talk about this at all, but what is and again, this is, for anybody, what are a couple of key components that you always make sure that your plans have, or if you're recommending somebody to have a plan, like what are the questions that, I should ask myself to have a good plan in place?
I'm not a financial planner.
Right.
So, but I did consider being one. But yeah, so for myself, I think, you should have a cash cushion in place. One of the rules that I like to tell people is live on 50% of your income. Great rule, and I'd say after tax, because if you make $200,000, so let's say we're talking about accredited investors, if you make $200,000, and let's say for argument's sake your tax rate's 0, so it's nice easy math. So if you're living off $100,000 and you save $100,000, for every year you work, you don't have to work for a year, even if you earn 0 on your money, or the rate of inflation. So I think that's a great rule. And then if you're investing that much, theoretically you should do significantly better than 0 if you know what you're doing, or you have partners that you work with that know that. So I think that's first and foremost. The second thing is you should have proper insurance in place. The reason I say that, I'm colored by it from my personal experience, as we all are. My father died when I was 5.
Okay.
And he had a small amount of life insurance, but enough so that I had a small amount to go to college, and had a very tight budget, but I was able to get an education and give my mother peace of mind for some expenses as well. And then have a plan B. Like, what if you lose your job? What if your other investments don't work out? Is that an IRA? Is it is it a life insurance plan? Is it an annuity? Have something like a safety net that you've built for yourself.
No doubt.
I think that's key. And then the reason I say that, it's kind of like wearing a helmet. Like, I've raced bikes for a lot of years. Then if you do fall off your bike, at least you have some protection. That might not be a perfect example, or putting your seatbelt on. So that means you can focus on the task at hand.
Yeah, you don't have to worry
Right.
about everything else per se.
Yeah. So if somebody's really worried about investing $100,000 in something, they absolutely can't lose it because they have to have it for something else. That's not a feeling that I would want. So
Right.
I think that's a good litmus test. If you absolutely couldn't survive or live with yourself after making that investment, then it's probably not the right one.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for sharing. There's some really good insight and tips there. Well, if somebody has some additional questions or wants to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, email's great.
Okay.
So C Larsen, and that's with an E. So it's CLARSEN at CannellCapitalPartners.com.
Okay.
We have a free ebook.
I was about to ask you, where do people get
Yep, and we can give you that link for your listenership,
That'd be
readership to put on there. All they have to do is email me. I'll send them a free copy.
Okay.
It's short read. You can read it in a weekend, or some people read it in a couple hours.
Yeah.
Yep. And then if people think it's a good fit or they want to learn more, they can reach out to me, and I'd be happy to set up an introductory call.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Chris, well, I appreciate it so much. Thanks for taking the time.
Absolutely. Rodrigo, thank you.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
All right, guys, there you have it. Don't forget to go out, get that ebook, read it. Make sure you connect with Chris. Let us know what questions you have, and please share this or tag somebody that you've had these conversations about, or you think that we discussed some things that maybe some questions were posed that we might, the answers were discussed here. All right, y'all. Thanks so much, and thanks for tuning in. See you next time.